Hey everybody, Aaron Rift here from NoDQ.com to talk about the greatest returns in wrestling history. Now this is not a debut, this is a return, which means that a wrestler was making his return to a company that he had previously worked for, and he was returning for whatever reason, whether it was due to being part of another company or being injured, whatever the reason was, this was his big return moment. And these are some of the greatest moments in my opinion, and also in the opinion of No DQ visitors. I got some input from people on Facebook and Twitter. Got a big list here, so let's get through some of these names here. Let's start off with Jerry the King Lawler, last year making his comeback. Jerry Lawler had his heart attack live on Raw. Very shocking moment, and the fact that he survived it was unbelievable. And for him to be able to come back a couple of months later and be back in the announce chair, I mean, it was really remarkable, and definitely one of the all-time great returns. So I'm starting off with that. Not really a storyline return, but I wanted to mention that and, bring up Jerry Lawler and his real-life comeback. Now let's talk about some of the storyline returns. First off, Ric Flair making his return to the WWE in 2001, being revealed as the co-owner of the WWE with Vince McMahon. This was the start of a great storyline, and I liked it because it made you forget about the whole invasion storyline, and WWE was going in a new direction, and what better way than to have Ric Flair involved. Although, Ric Flair should have been part of the invasion, but that's a whole different discussion topic. This was a really awesome return and very emotional. It was in Charlotte, North Carolina, Ric Flair's hometown, so it was the perfect place to bring him back in his own hometown. Next up, the return of Scott Steiner at the 2002 Survivor Series. You had Matt Hardy and Chris Nowinski out there talking trash, and then all of a sudden, Scott Steiner's music hits, and it's in Madison Square Garden. So one of the best places to have somebody return in MSG, because everybody knows who Scott Steiner is in that building. He comes out, he beats up both guys. The crowd is going nuts. The crowd is barking when Scott Steiner is flexing or whatever. And it was really cool. And then Scott Steiner yells out, "Give me the fucking mic." So it was really entertaining stuff. Great way to return to WWE. Next up, Chris Jericho, the second coming of Chris Jericho in 2007. You had Randy Orton out there, who was going to be his next opponent. And then you have this guy with the torch backstage running around. Then Jericho just clotheslines him. And you know it's him at this point, and the crowd's just going crazy. Jericho comes out and cuts a promo on Randy Orton, and it's great stuff, and it's great to see Chris Jericho back. He was gone for over 2 years, and it was really awesome to see him back. And, an honorable mention here would be his latest return at the 2013 Royal Rumble, because nobody was expecting it. So when he came out, I was there in person, everybody just went crazy for his return. So, I mean, that was a really cool moment as well. Next, Brock Lesnar's return from 2012, the night after WrestleMania 28. This was just about the best place you could have him return, the night after WrestleMania, with all those hardcore WWE fans in attendance that had traveled from all over the place to come in for WrestleMania. When his music hit, the crowd just came unglued. He came out, laid out John Cena, knocked off the hat, kicked the hat, and everybody was just going crazy. I think there were holy shit chants. The people were just on fire for Brock Lesnar's return, and he got just about the biggest pop you've ever heard when he gave John Cena the F5. It was really awesome. It was so exciting. You had grown men in the crowd wetting themselves. I mean, it was really funny. John Cena making his return at the 2008 WWE Royal Rumble. As much as people rag on Cena and bash him, when he came out for this, I was with a big group of people, and everybody was going crazy, oh my God, John Cena's back. He was injured, and people thought he was going to be gone for 6 months or even longer. So for him to come back so soon was a big surprise. Nobody saw it coming. It hadn't leaked on the internet or anything, so it was a huge deal to have him return just out of nowhere at the Royal Rumble. So I mean, it was a really cool Rumble moment to have him come back completely unannounced. Next up, let's talk about the two returns of The Undertaker. First off, his 1994, well, 3 returns. First off, his 1994 return after losing the casket match with Yokozuna and making his big comeback. The match sucked, Undertaker versus Undertaker, but the entrance and the whole return was very well done and very cool to see. Next up would be the return of Undertaker in 2000 as the American Badass. And this was a really cool way for him to return. It was something different. He was tweaking his character, just bringing it up to date. And the crowd went nuts for his return. I mean, it was really awesome to see how the crowd reacted to it. He came out on the bicycle and just laid to waste everybody. It was very spectacular. And then, of course, his 2004 return at WrestleMania 20, going back to the old dead man character, was something very special. And you had Paul Bearer there introducing him. Really cool to see the old Undertaker again after he had been the American Badass for several years. And going back to 1992, the Ultimate Warrior's return. This was after he had been gone for about 6 months. His last appearance was SummerSlam in 1991. And this was completely unexpected. He came out at the end of the Hulk Hogan Sid Justice match. Papa Shango had gotten involved, and the Ultimate Warrior, his music hit all of a sudden, and he ran down and made the save, and it was just really cool to see him back and then see him and Hulk Hogan, the old rivals, embrace and celebrate in the ring together one more time. So really cool way to end WrestleMania with the return of the Ultimate Warrior as a total surprise. And speaking of surprises, the return of Lex Luger to WCW on the very first Monday Nitro. This was very significant because it was the first Nitro and they needed something big to get the buzz and get people talking about WCW. And this was it. The shocking appearance of Lex Luger, who had told Vince McMahon and WWE that he was going to be staying with them. All of a sudden, he's on Nitro, completely unexpected. So, I mean, it was a huge news story at the time. Lex Luger showing up out of nowhere on Nitro. Next is Triple H making his return in 2002. Triple H tore his quad in the spring of 2001, and he was gone for 7-8 months. And WWE showed all these videos with him rehabbing and getting himself back in shape. And this comeback was at Madison Square Garden. So once again, the perfect venue to bring somebody back after being gone for a while, because everybody was anticipating his return. And he got a huge babyface welcome when he made his comeback, and you could see it in his face just how emotional he was at the reception he got. So I mean, really cool moment right here to see Triple H come back and do what he loves doing. And similar to Triple H's return is the return of Shawn Michaels that same year, 2002. You had Kevin Nash in the NWO colors introduce his old buddy Shawn Michaels, and this was something very unexpected. One wasn't expecting Shawn Michaels to come back, but here he was. You thought he was done with wrestling completely, and he's back. And it would be the start of a great run for Shawn Michaels. A lot of people would say his second run was even better than his first. So this was the start of it, and just a really cool surprise to see him. And even though he was wearing the NWO colors, he got this huge pop, and it was very cool to see him and Kevin Nash back together again. The two dudes with attitudes reunited. And speaking of shocking returns, The Rock making his big WWE return in 2011. A lot of us thought we'd never see The Rock again in a WWE ring. He really downplayed the idea of coming back to WWE. And I wasn't expecting it. I mean, I've talked about this before. If I knew that The Rock was going to be there, I mean, it was in Anaheim, California, so it was about an hour drive from me. If I had known The Rock was going to be there, I would have been in Anaheim for that show. I had no idea he was going to be there, and nobody else did either. I mean, it was kept secret. It did not leak on the internet. The Rock comes out, and everybody just goes crazy for it. It's just something unbelievable, something you thought you weren't going to see. And, you know, it was the beginning of The Rock versus Cena feud. So, really awesome return. The Rock finally, after so many years, coming back home to WWE. And speaking of somebody coming back after so long and somebody you thought you would never see in WWE again, Bret Hart's return at the start of 2010. Just something very surreal to see not only his return, but to see him and his longtime rival Shawn Michaels bury the hatchet and patch things up. just something you thought you would never see, and just an unbelievable, unforgettable moment in WWE history to see it happen right before your eyes on live television. And now, my top 3 greatest returns. Starting off number 3, Hulk Hogan's return in 2002. Hogan came back with Hall and Nash to form the NWO. Another person that you didn't think you would see in WWE again. You thought that Hogan and Vince had this falling out. They would never get back together. But here he is. Hulk Hogan is back in the WWF. Just unbelievable. And then Hulk Hogan goes back to his old colors, and he gets this huge standing ovation from the fans. And it led to The Rock and Hulk Hogan, and then Hulk Hogan would have one more run as WWE champion. So one of the greatest comeback stories of all time, period, just to have Hulk Hogan back in the WWE and just doing his thing again. The number 2 greatest return of all time, in my opinion. And granted, it wasn't a very long period of time, but it was just something very special and very emotional. And I'm talking about the return of Ric Flair to WCW in 1998. Eric Bischoff had taken Ric Flair off television in real life because Ric Flair wanted to go to one of his son's wrestling matches, something like that. I don't remember the whole story, but it was something like that. And Flair went to one of these events for his son, and Bischoff got pissed off, and he just pulled Ric Flair from television. And then there was this huge legal battle between Ric Flair and WCW. So you thought maybe Ric Flair was done with WCW, and he wasn't going to be appearing in wrestling, period. But then you have this reuniting of the Four Horsemen. You have this segment. It's in South Carolina, Ric Flair country. And Arn Anderson introduces Ric Flair. And one of the biggest pops of all time, when Ric Flair's name was announced, he's like, "Ric Flair, come on down." And you just see everybody in the crowd going crazy. And Ric Flair comes out. He has tears in his eyes. Just very emotional if you're a wrestling fan and a Ric Flair fan to see this. And you knew it was very raw and very real, the stuff coming out of his mouth. And you had Eric Bischoff come out there, and Flair was ripping into Bischoff. "Fire me, I'm already fired." Just probably the greatest moment in WCW history, in my opinion. And although this one does come fairly close, the number 1 greatest return of all time was, in my opinion, Scott Hall coming back to WCW May 1996. This was the start of the NWO, what would lead to be the NWO storyline. Scott Hall comes out, says, "You want a war? You got the Nacho Man and Scheme Gene. You want a war? You got a war." Just a great promo. Where, oh, where is Billionaire Ted? I pretty much know the whole promo. I mean, it was just very memorable, and it was a turning point in the Monday Night Wars, because now all of a sudden you were tuning into WCW and not WWE, and it was because of segments like this, and of course the significance of this return for Scott Hall, what would lead to the formation of the NWO, just one of the most important moments in wrestling history, and just one of the ones that people still talk about to this day. So that'll do it for my thoughts on the greatest returns. I'm sure I missed some really good ones. I tried to compile the best list I could. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment on youtube.com/NoDQCAW, and stay tuned to NoDQ.com for all the very latest in WWE and TNA.